the Futures Here special series hosted by Creative Brands. The Futures Here showcases leaders, thinkers, and trendsetters from the creative industry, namely advertising, media, communication, and branding. My name is K.G. Srinivas, and I'm Editor-in-Chief of Creative Brands, a portal that covers the global creative industry and economy. Today we have with us Rajiv Menon, Chief Executive Creative Officer at Ogilvy Sri Lanka. Rajiv Menon has been in the business of distilling ideas, distilling the essence of brands, people, and situations. In fact, his practice has been beyond tradition and convention, something that has defined his body of work over the last 3 decades in the industry. This has been sociology and anthropology in action in the business of creative communication. Rajiv has shaped the destinies of several brands in India, Southeast Asia, the US and UK for clients ranging from global Fortune 500 companies to Indian public sector giants to SMEs and entrepreneurs. And across categories as diverse as FMCG, banking and insurance, automobiles, telecom, hospitality, beauty, airlines, fashion accessories, media and education, and so on. Rajiv, welcome to this show. How are you doing in Sri Lanka?
Thanks for having me, Srini. And thank you again for that very generous introduction that you had. Yeah, I'm kind of pretty embarrassed and humbled at the same time. Thank you.
You deserve it, Rajiv.
Thank you. Well, Sri Lanka has been, it's been a great journey here. I've just completed 3 years. It's a beautiful island, lovely set of people, very warm, very hospitable. And hopefully we're trying to create some advertising which is as warm and hospitable as well.
I'm sure the Sri Lankan media is conducive to that sort of creativity and engagement with brands and ideas and situations.
Oh yes, it is. In fact, like most islanders, the whole country they've got this beautiful laid-back feel about themselves. Not that, I don't mean they're not industrious, but the fact is something that we don't really have in India, which is we're all running. It's all the rat race continuously. Here, people are cognizant about the rat race, but the important aspect is they are an island, they're a beautiful island, and they know that we need to live for the present to enjoy the future. In India, as I see, we're always thinking about the future. If I do today, how is it going to impact my tomorrow? And so here, I think it's been a very charming lesson of first enjoy today. Tomorrow will come, we shall enjoy that as well. So that's nice, beautiful, emotional underlining for a whole lot of work that really happens here. And so emotion also in terms of you have the happiness, the sadness, you have your typical emotions that we all go through, but there's this beautiful undercurrent of humor, which is again coming from this beautiful chalta hai attitude, like we have in India, Let's see, when it comes, we'll tackle that as well. So that's been a very beautiful thing, which has also helped in terms of resurgence as and when, because it's an island, it's prone to a whole lot of natural calamities that the island had about 15 years ago. There was a big war that happened for way longer, but it's always bounced back, and that's that very resilient attitude. Along with
Rajiv, interestingly, in fact, when you talk about Sri Lanka and it's an island.
Yes.
And normally we would say, well, an island can be insular. However, from what you've just said, it's entirely contrary to being insular. It looks like a very cosmopolitan, very modern, very competitive, but at the same time eschewing, as you said, the rat race.
It's a interesting juxtaposition that you matched, because you have the core tradition operating along with a contemporary mindset. So as you go to the hinterland as well, you'll find a lot of modern ways of doing things, but you also have the very, very core traditional values. So the old value systems are very much there because see, it's an island, like I said. We've had invasions here as well, and a lot of those influences still abound. But largely you have the three ethnicities, which is the Sinhala, which is the Sinhalese majority here. They're largely the Buddhists. And then you have the Tamil population as well. You have the Muslims as well. And largely in the bigger cities, there's an English-speaking population as well. So, in fact, in Colombo, every street sign has the name in the three languages, which is nice. They all coexist quite beautifully, actually. In fact, most of our media campaigns is what they call EST, English, Sinhala, Tamil.
Okay.
Yes.
Rajeev, what has utterly changed in the last 3 months? Has it changed at all, or do we see a sort of a seismic departure or seismic break in the continuum of the world of advertising and communication globally?
No, there has been a change. In fact, I think if there's one word which is most commonly used with this pandemic and whatever we've been going through for the last 4 months, has been this word called unprecedented. And everybody, right from politicians, country heads to anybody and everybody keeps using that word. And that actually has been the size of the problems that have been, and therefore the change that has also happened. Now, if you look at it globally, a lot of brands have cut down in spending. So has it, I'm sure in India as well, in Sri Lanka as well. There's economies are tanking big time, really. You really, I mean, everybody's really looking out for somebody to help out. And it's literally like everybody's looking for a bridge over these troubled waters, you know, as it were, as Paul Simon and Arthur Garfunkel wrote way back 40 years ago. So it's actually playing true, and changes have been unprecedented in more ways than one. And in fact, even in Sri Lanka, really speaking, I see this whole digital trend coming through. So in terms of marketing and communications, digital has always been an arm. Even in Ogilvy, we have our own separate company called Ogilvy Digital, and so do all the other biggies as well. But for the consumer per se, what really happened is Sri Lanka had a curfew, unlike a lockdown in India. So curfew means you really can't step out of home. You know, you would have to meet the cops midway. So you had to wait for essential services to really come over to your doorstep, which happens in larger communities or condominiums. But what happens is the small-time traders, all of them decided to go online because that was the easiest. So many of them had their curfew passes, so they could deliver to your home. And that really helped a lot because the bigger chains, like you have Cargills and Keels and all of them, they already have their online stuff going on, but many of them crashed because the orders were quite high. And they were really, and also the inventory management was becoming a problem because factories were shut down also for the greater portion of the time. So these small-time operators, the neighborhood stores, started doing home deliveries. So it was a seismic shift in the way they conducted their business. And what happened is brands, the known brands, were not available. So smaller brands, local brands started getting into the fore. And so when you actually want bread, you have a family at home, you need bread. The brands don't matter, you know. So when it really comes to dire circumstances, the product is what matters, the brands don't. Whatever's available, I buy it because that's what I need. I have kids at home, so how do you feed them? So that's how milk, you know, all your essentials really. Flour, a lot of bread, of course, largely because it's a fairly bread-eating nation, along with rice as well. So a lot of these small brands, unknown brands, got into the kitchens.
Do you think these brands sort of emerged during the crisis? They made themselves felt and known and experienced alongside the bigger traditional brands?
Yes, they were brands that probably did exist, but at least I'd never heard about them. And I even know colleagues of mine who say that they're using XYZ brand of bread, which even they hadn't heard of before, and they're the locals here. So the thing is, but these brands actually came to the fore because they were available. They were made by small-time bakers, providing to their small stores. But these are the stores which became they were filling kitchens, they were filling stomachs. And that was most important, really. So they actually got into the households, so much so that when curfew started diluting a bit, these brands continued to operate. So now you have the bigger brands.
Can we extrapolate this experience globally of the emergence of small brands on the back of such an opportunity? Do you think there's a possibility of such small brands coming to the fore?
Well, they did come to the fore during that time. Now it all depends about, now the country has opened up since about a month now. In fact, most of us have actually we were working from home for about 2.5 months. But from June 15th, Ogilvy has kicked off operations from our office, much to most of our glee, because as a creative operation, it's good to see people around. It worked better than Zoom. But yes, now I'm not sure how they're going to really sustain their operations, and how loyal customers would really be to them. Because I would think when you really need it the most, if a brand comes into your life, or anybody does, is a friend in need is a friend indeed, right? So that's what really matters. But I think they would continue with their traction. Things won't really disappear so quickly, as long as they keep probably maintaining that quality that they had. But our world is very materialistic, unfortunately. Customers are fickle. And when the biggies come in, you typically enter a large superstore where these small brands are really not available, because it would take them a lot of investments to actually get into the bigger store. So now it actually depends on their investment play. They did the emotional play. Now it's about them to do their financial play. But on a larger space, I'll tell you, these brands really would, if they really maintain their gameplay, they probably would still do quite well. But I can't really tell you how well, because the biggies obviously have bigger purses. But the most important aspect I would see for brands, it's like this, when the chips are down, and when customers are really, since we're talking about brands, that is, so therefore advertising and communications is obviously interlinked to their survival. When the chips are down, people aren't looking for communications, they're looking for survival. You would give a damn to which ad's playing on TV. Of course, the TV viewership rates increase because the men are at home as well. So the media, yes, there's been a proliferation in terms of the media, in terms of numbers. But the fact is, the commercials were not too many, because many brands weren't producing, everybody's cut back, or production budgets had come down. But I think a lot of brands, what happened was, those who try to sell, I don't think, and I think that's globally, you wouldn't really make much of a headway, because customers and consumers, especially when there are crises like this, which is a global pandemic, it's a global crisis, and where survival is paramount. You want to ensure that you, your family, your society, your neighborhoods are safe. Brands have to coexist and communicate in that same rhythm. Otherwise, you try and sell, it could be a problem. It's like, oh, you're an opportunistic fellow, you don't try and do that. So to me, if I would tell you, it's about solve, not sell. You need to solve problems. Now, a brand can't solve every problem, but you can be empathetic. You can show how you can, as a brand, along with all the values that you have, try and, comfort customers. Whatever your product may be, you could be in insurance. Don't try and sell a policy. Try and tell them the values of security. Right. We did for one of our clients here, and we did actually 2 campaigns. Budgets were cryingly low, so we just took their logo And we just played around with their logo. And the first set was when COVID just had set into Sri Lanka, work from home and curfew had been set in. And we just, that time it was all about wearing masks, washing your hands thoroughly for 20 seconds. And then it was about using hand sanitizers, keeping social distancing, all of those, because that time that was the new norm and you had to educate people. So we just did this simple animated campaign where from that, there was this unit, there was a sanitizer falling from it, somebody washing their hands, and then it actually metamorphoses to become a logo. So very simple campaign like that, where it is all about taking care. It's an insurance brand. We want you to be safe and secure, which is also the DNA of an insurance company. That's what a policy does. But you don't sell a policy, right. You are. But what happens is a brand is actually getting into a different mind space at that point in time. At least it's like, hey, you care for me. Thank you for that. And this brand, the brand is Selingco Life, which is the biggest life insurance player in Sri Lanka. And they've been so for the last about 15 years or so. But, and their tagline is relationship for life. So we just brought it to life, literally. And this time the relationship is all about ensuring that you're safe. So we will, let's play into that. There will be a time for you to buy the policy. So, and we did a second extension of that campaign when the schools will just have reopened now. But this played out in early June when companies where the lockdown was getting called off or the curfew was getting called off, life was slowly getting back to normal. So we called it the post-COVID campaign. And in the same style again, because budgets were really low. So we said, let's animate the same way. So you had that main unit, which later forms, of course, the main logo unit. But that central unit just stayed there and the entire communication played around it. And it was actually in the voice of this little teenage daughter of theirs who talks about life was so beautiful these last 3 months and how I could see dad helping mom in the cooking, and my little brother was actually waking up early and trying to do his own little bits and, and now I understand that every little coin that granny puts into that little piggy bank, which we used to all tease her, we used to call her thrifty and all of that. But now I know the value of that each coin. And the biggest thing is the joy that the family had. Now, our schools are going to reopen, my dad's going to get back to work, mom's going to get busy again. But I just have one thing in mind, that I hope this little bond that we have, this beautiful relationship we had for these 2.5 months where we were all into everything together. I just hope that continues, And we just, that became the logo and said relationship for life. We didn't talk about any policy, nothing. So it was a Sorry?
May I ask you to hold the thought? May I ask you to hold the thought there?
Sure.
And we relate it to a larger question. Rajiv, you've over the years built a vast repertoire of work across mediums, industries, brands and regions.
Yeah.
From award-winning works to mind-transforming films to brand redefining campaigns. The journey has been quite a remarkable one, last 30 years. To a creative mind such as yours, what is the role you see for yourself in messaging and branding? Because it's a much bigger role that probably conceivably the human mind can probably comprehend. Your role in messaging and branding in the industry.
In this context or going forward?
Going forward. And of course, in the practice, in your practice as a communication professional.
Srini, actually that's a pretty heavy question, really. See, I believe that we've all come up a certain way with gaining experience as we've gone along, and that's why you have the corporate ladder, right? Others, if there was a corporate elevator, it would have been a lot more easier, faster, and way quicker. But as we go along, we kind of keep learning. We're still learning even today. I'm still learning every day. And the thing is, I feel you need to keep giving back. And I spend a lot of time, even in my daily work, trying to mentor teams, guiding them along, because I've been fortunate enough to have worked in several markets, have worked with several brands across the globe. And there's always new learning, there's new consumer behavioral patterns that keep coming by. End of the day, we are all human beings. We all relate to certain stimuli, but then we also relate to certain different stimuli depending on the culture and the ecosystems that which kind of drive where we are. So those are obviously new inputs that come into different places. A lot of our countries in our part of the world are always growing. Consumers are continuously growing. Their needs are growing. Brand needs, therefore, are also growing. So communication keeps changing, keeps elevating. And the lower middle class is getting to be like a middle class. Middle class is getting to be an upper middle class. So you see this beautiful growth that's happening in society as well. So as they grow, aspirations grow. There are different brands, and they start moving from one brand to other. So there's this, as you're moving up the Maslow's hierarchy, you also have brands kind of are also strategically placed everywhere. So there are a lot of people, I'm not even getting into the self-actualization stage, but as you keep growing, aspirations are growing. So the needs of advertising and communications are growing. So you have a whole lot of the younger generation who's actually growing, coming along. And I feel, people at my level, it's best to, you start keeping imparting whatever you know of, whatever you keep learning, and help them grow a lot faster, actually. Because today, of course, they are in the times of the internet. When I got into advertising, Tim Berners-Lee had not yet invented the World Wide Web. And the internet was a pipe dream. Probably only George Lucas probably knew where it was all going somewhere. So that was where it is. So the world is completely different. And I believe every day, you keep learning. And like I have this very pet quote of mine, which is, leadership doesn't happen in a day. It happens daily. And, you keep learning, you keep teaching, you keep leading. And I see my role largely getting into those forms. Whilst, of course, a new brief still gives me the, I'm like a child when I see one. It just gets me really, really excited and so pumped. And as we're all growing younger every day, I like to keep transferring this energy every day to a whole lot of people who kind of engage with me, whether it's my own creative team, who are like my family, the larger teams, which are the account management, our clients as well. So it keeps growing. And I believe, it's our minds. Our mind is like tofu. It kind of tastes like whatever you marinate it in. And so my job is to keep marinating every day. So different marinades.
I think should bring us to that. Yes, which I think we should bring up the question of, we spoke about marinating, you spoke about, disruption to an extent. I was thinking back to your United Breweries campaign, but I think what we discussed about to innovate is to disrupt, and to disrupt, is to recreate, and to recreate is to redefine. And I think your work has been replete with such instances. Can you tell us about how did you get to the nub of the brand, United Breweries, when you said, drink responsibly, and about the multi-layered messaging, and you're talking about the social impact of that simple single phrase, drink responsibly.
Well, yeah, drink responsibly is something that all global brands do talk about, because they want, if you're going to consume my brand, you need to be careful. You should not be driving after drinking. You should not be creating chaos in your happy surroundings at home. So that's something that brands have been talking about. But when we actually were working on this is about, I think, 12 or 13 years ago. And the idea was to do a drink responsible campaign. And of course, it's a dark market. This was in India. And how do you get people to really, act upon a conversation? All right. So everybody knows drink responsibly. You keep seeing it everywhere. You keep seeing commercials that kind of end with the words drink responsibly. It's actually a blind spot. When you actually start drinking, those words just kind of fade away. You know about it, that in your mind, where everybody's educated with the kind of literacy levels that we have in India. Everybody knows about it. But how do you get somebody to act upon it? So I was trying to do some research, and a lot of, I think, fabulous ideas come from very powerful insights. Okay, and those insights come in if you really care to mine them. You always have some of them which are, on the epidermis. That's there. That those are the basic consumer behavioral patterns that kind of go through. But do you really want to really just get under the skin and try and find out and mine it? So there are these little nuggets that keep coming about. And I remember those days, it still continues to date. A lot of domestic violence erupts from drinking. And especially that time, there was some alarming statistic that when men, largely men, they drink, they go home, and they used to abuse their wives. And this was a very alarming. I can't recall the numbers because the campaign happened more than a decade ago. And that was one. Two, how do you communicate that in a manner where you're not using a surrogate, because the brand can't really talk about itself, right? So you typically have music cassettes, drinking water, carbonated water, and all of those for a product that's anything but that, right? And everybody knows it. So that kind of a hogwash, it's not going to, and when you say drink responsibly, that's not really going to percolate anywhere. So in fact, you had to get into the consciousness in some form. So how do you get into that consciousness? That was the first challenge. Secondly, when a person is not sober, getting into the consciousness, beg your pardon, is a lot more difficult because his mind is also not there in its place. He's in a very merry space. He's floating somewhere. So then getting into him is going to be even more difficult. So the challenge that we had and we put ourselves into really and put forward was the fact that we had this insight about this alarming number of domestic violence cases. We needed to get that in and hit it hard. So that was the idea. We said there was this one integral aspect of all your drinking. It goes along with the bottle, which is a coaster. They share a brotherhood. Okay, and so your bottle is always on a coaster. So the whole idea was, what could we do with a coaster that could drive the point home as effectively as I just told you right now? So we had this image of a woman, a battered woman. She had this black eye. It was printed on the coaster. And it said, I can't recall the line there was, but it was about drink responsibly. And we just put a white film on top of it. And that film was something that, like you have various kinds of films today in the printing process, where when you print, you have some which react to heat, you have some which react to water. Okay, so this film, what happens is when anything wet is placed on it, the film starts dissolving. And you start seeing whatever is below because it gets transparent actually. So these were plain white coasters when this chappie starts drinking with his friends. And as the beer bottles or whatever he's drinking, it's full of ice or they're chilled, that's kept on the coaster. And as the water starts getting absorbed into that coaster, the upper layer starts disappearing. So at one point in time, he's waiting for his drink and then he kind of looks down. You start seeing a semblance of some woman there. You really can't see because some parts are still, which are not adequately wetted enough, are still white. And then slowly you start seeing this image appear because it's the layer, because by the time you're into your third drink, the coaster is adequately wet. And then what you see is you're just staring at this battered woman where she's got this black eye. It's a terrible visual when you look at it, you know? And you, at that moment, I think, however high you are, all of that would have just kind of collapsed because it hits you home very hard, very deep, and most importantly, through an action that you yourself initiated. It was not advertising that came and told you something and you say, bugger off, not this time. This is something you initiated because when you came and sat there, the coaster was right. So it's your actions that have actually created it, which actually metaphorically means your drinking action is going to lead to abuse, probably in the next hour. And that's the genesis of that whole idea. And so it really didn't get too, it wasn't too commercialized. It was something that we kind of piloted it out, and yeah, and that's really dear because that's something else that you were talking about. You know, how do I see my role? I see it in trying to, you know, to me, my life is all about this little simple 3-letter word called joy. You know, so when you seek joy, joy comes to you. So it's a very positive way of looking at things. It is the passion that you instill in anything that you do. Could be in washing dishes. Yeah, I know it doesn't feel so passionate, but just do it with a joyful temperament, and it ceases to be a chore. It's just something that you need to get out of the way, you know. So that's something that I would really like to invest in within myself, so that I can just start spreading a lot of that. So that's going to be through the work we do as an agency, the impact that the work has on people, you know. So I can see a lot of social work coming along, probably teaching, mentoring, you know, going to schools, villages, all of those things. Yeah. So.